Hi again then guys, and welcome to another special projects replica build. And in this particular replica we are replicating one of the pretty rare special versions of the Subaru Impreza, namely the S204 model. And basically this model is fairly similar to the standard model. There are some significant changes, but it's not extremely different. Now visually we have made some notable changes, so we will go over to the visual tuning garage to cover those, then of course go over to the mechanical tuning garage, and finally of course take it out to a track to see how it handles itself. Now as far as the bodywork itself, we don't really need to do anything to this car because the body kits and flat floor etc. are completely over the top for the vehicle, so you really don't need those. The only thing we've done to the body itself is to change the rear wing. The S204 has a much smaller rear wing, perhaps surprisingly for a faster model. Now unfortunately we can't get really close to the rear wing. It's still a little bit too big technically, but it's about as close as we can get. Now I've gone for the Type F wing supports, which are a similar kind of silvery grey to the body. For the wing itself, we've gone for the small Type H wing and the Type J winglets on the end. As far as size, we've gone for 0 on width, and for height I've gone -12, so in other words as low as it can go. As far as the rims on the car, we've gone for the second size up, and we've gone for these BBS RA rims, which don't look exactly the same as the S204's rims, but at the same time don't look too far off. I haven't fitted additional meters on this one, although obviously that's down to personal preference. As far as the colour, I believe you can get this car in a couple of different colours, similar colours to the normal Imprezas. I've opted for a silver, which the car is available in. Not this exact silver of course, but similar to it, and the silver is a very good looking one actually. It's one of my personal favourite silvers in the game, called Thunder Silver, as you can see, and that silver comes from the Toyota 2000 GT. We've also of course gone for that colour on the rear wing. And for the rims, we've also gone for a metallic colour, and the rims are kind of a gunmetal grey kind of colour on the actual car. So the particular grey that I've gone for is called X-Power Grey, which comes from the MG TF160, which is a pretty good looking grey as well, and a good one to have in your collection. So that's it overall for the visual look, and there is of course room for personal variation with the colour etc. So now let's of course go over to the mechanical garage for the tuning side of things. Now, as always of course, I do like to try and make my replicas not only accurate to the real car where possible, but also, if possible, PP relevant, because if you can have a car that is realistic to the real car but also useful for racing, well, that's potentially just a bonus for those who want it. Now we've gone for sports softs because, as we said earlier, it is of course a more production street based build. We've left the brakes stock as we usually do with these street builds. For suspension we've got the ride height on 90 front and rear, springs we've rounded off to 475 and 425. The dampers and anti-roll I've left on 3. You don't want the car to be too stiff of course, it is still a street car, you don't want it to feel too good in effect. Camber and tow we've got neutral. As far as the gearbox, from what I could find, the car runs essentially the same, if not a very similar gearbox to the normal STI. Now I may be wrong about that, I'm sure there are people who are super fans of this particular car or the Impreza in general who could say otherwise. If so, do feel free to put that down in the comments for the benefit of others. But as I said, as far as I could find, it seemed to me to have the same gearbox. As far as the diff, we've got the lowest initial torque, highest acceleration and highest braking, and a torque split of 50-50. I've left the prop shaft, clutch and flywheel stock. Again, same reason as the brakes, to give it more of a street feel. As far as power, we do have an oil change, and then the actual car has 320 horsepower, so we've replicated that with the exhaust manifold and cat, and then we've reduced the power down to 99.4%. And as far as the downforce, we're running the maximum, that's optional of course. And as far as the weight, the actual S204, according to the specs that I found, is a little heavier than the normal model on the game that is, so I've added a 60 kilo ballast, which we've left in the middle of the car, to bring us to the actual weight of the S204, which is 1450 kilos, and as you can see it rounds off very nicely to 475 pp, and it actually has a pretty decent amount of power for that pp level as well. So now let's of course finally take it out to a track to see how it performs. Now, with the particular way that I've set up the steering on this car, particularly the differential, it does handle differently to what you may expect an Impreza to. It has a slight heaviness and understeer aspect to the handling, especially midway through the corner, but the turn in and also the throttle out of corners is superb. You can really give it the beans, and the more acceleration you give, it actually handles better through some corners rather than letting off the throttle. So handling wise it's highly competitive, and if of course you do decide to race this car at the 475 pp level, obviously I hope you find it competitive, and either way I hope you find it fun. And if you would like to keep up with other replica builds like this on the channel as soon as they come out, be sure to slap subscribe down below for that. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.